They're noisy.
Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome all that are here tonight to the July 2nd, 2019 Union County Planning Board meeting. Appreciate all the members being here. All the seats are filled. That's good, except for Chris. And we hope he has a safe trip to Buffalo, and he wished everybody a happy 4th. So anyway, with that, we'll go ahead and get started. We do have all voting members here. First item that we'd like to look at would be the additions and deletions to the agenda. Do we have anything that needs to be added or deleted?
Did you appoint one of the alternates?
Do we have a quorum?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You've got the 6 regulars, but usually they appoint one of the alternates, so we'll have a set.
Last time I know we had both of them.
Yeah, well, we were 2 short last time.
Okay.
1 short this time, so we usually appoint. We'll have a full.
Do you have any
set.
notes as to who had it the last time when
I
we had?
don't know, I'm sorry.
It was both of us last time.
That's right.
Who had it before that? You
I
remember?
think it was Robert.
Robert did? Okay. Chris? I'll make a motion that to fill that spot that Chris be approved. Do we have a nomination for that? Or
I'll say.
Second? Thank you, Louis. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That's my fault, Dick. I'm glad you caught that. Okay. Thank you, Chris. Anyway, additions and deletions to the agenda. Do we have a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Okay. We have a second? Second. Okay, thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Ayes have it. Next, we go to approval of the minutes of the June 4th Planning Board. Are there any concerns about those minutes? Anything that needs to be added or deleted, changed, etc.? If not, do we have a motion to accept those minutes as presented?
I make a motion we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Okay, Russell, thank you. Do we have a second? Patrick, thank you. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay. So what are you saying, Rob? Okay, I missed that. Okay, thank you. All right, next item after approval, we're going to get into item number 6, and that's to look at Poplar Meadows Phase 2, CZ 2019-006. Lee? Enlighten us, please.
All right. This is 2019-006 Poplar Meadows Phase 2. It's a 70-unit townhome development. Has a connection from Phase 1. You can kind of see where I'm circling where Phase 1 is, and they're tying into that stub out. It's about almost 6 dwelling units per acre. Phase 1 was approved a couple years ago. Came to Planning Board, Board of County Commissioners for rezoning. Was approved, and I believe it's in the initial phases of construction right now. When it was approved, there were stub streets on both sides. There's one kind of directly opposite this, but this is tying in to that stub street. I'll skip over that for right now because I'm not sure that's correct. These are just some images from the property. This is Bonterra Village Way. This used to be Poplin Road, but when they built the bypass, they had some road reconfigurations and some renamings of roads. So this was renamed to Bonterra Village Way. This is looking sort of toward the bypass. So if you were to head down this top left road and go in the direction you're looking, you would kind of get to the bypass and make a hard right, and that at that point parallels the bypass. Top right, this is looking back toward the new alignment for Poplin Road. So Poplin Road's kind of over here, and then at this intersection, and it keeps going down this way. This is directly across the street from the petition property, and this is looking into the property from the road. Again, just a general overview of where the property is. Again, Bonterra Village Way, this gives you a better kind of sense of what I was talking about on those previous pictures. This is Poplin Road, used to come down like this, but now it was realigned. This is a new section of Poplin, makes a T intersection with Unionville Indian Trail. This is the property here. Phase 1 was right there. And the green is the town of Indian Trail. This is Bonterra Village. That's a pretty large neighborhood directly behind it. As you can see from the Metrolina model, these are considered to be underdeveloped properties. They're large based on the plans that are in place for the area. They're very low density. Plans for the area call for this to be medium to higher densities. Again, this is Bonterra Village. There's a pretty good amount of density behind this already. This is the current zoning in the area. This is Indian Trail, which is a SF5, SF4. That's one of their zoning designations. Phase 1 was zoned to an R4 district, and everything else in the general vicinity is, in the county at least, is RA40, which is a 1 unit per acre density. There is some commercial development that's been approved kind of at the intersection of Unionville Indian Trail Road and Poplin by the town of Indian Trail, and also where Unionville Indian Trail Road and Secret Shortcut intersect. These are pretty high ground. There's no major environmental features on this property. There's a stream to the south, and that stream is a little bit in phase 1, not too much, but there's a little bit that impacts phase 1, but we sort of were able to mitigate that during the phase 1 process, but no major environmental features on this property. Bonterra Village Way is a relatively new road. We do have a 2019 count of about 1,300 vehicle trips a day, so it's not a hugely used road. And then Poplin Road has a count of about 5,000 trips a day. No major improvements are anticipated along Bonterra Village Way. This is actually should be aligned with Poplin Road, because you can see how it kind of keeps going. This is on Bonterra Village Way with the turn. So this is the old CTP sort of overlaid on the new maps that we have. Schools that would serve this area, you have Poplin Elementary School, which is just down the street, and you've also got Porter Ridge shows up because we pulled this off the our website, but the students, if there were kids that lived in this neighborhood, they would go to Poplin, Porter Ridge Middle, and Porter Ridge High School. Our land use plan calls for this area to be mixed residential, which again is a higher density development pattern. There's also a neighborhood center, kind of somewhere some of that commercial development that Indian Trail has approved at the intersection of Secret Shortcut, Unionville Indian Trail, and Poplin and Unionville Indian Trail. The small area plan calls for this to be, this is the Secret Shortcut small area plan that you guys approved probably about a year ago, I think. This calls for a medium density pattern. And we always like to put these maps in here just to show who got notification. So we usually try to expand it out a little bit. We get all the people who sort of back up to the property. We also got the homeowners association for Bon Terre Village and all these highlighted properties you see here. And I'll kind of go through a couple of highlights of the staff report. A couple of comments we got from some different departments. Union County Public Works says that water and sewer can be extended to serve this development from phase one. Again, phase one's right here, so it can be extended fairly easily to serve that, provided the capacity exists. The sewer that would serve this site does drain to the Poplar Road pump station, and it has limited capacity. They do note that while there is capacity currently available at the pump station, capacity would have to be reevaluated at the time when plans are ready for permitting. So there's limited capacity in that pump station. And then the school's comments were, this is an age-targeted development, and this side is planned for 70 single-family dwelling units, and they noted that Poplar Elementary School is projected to be at 90% of rated capacity in August. Porter Ridge Middle is projected to be at 89% in August, and Porter Ridge High is projected to be 92% of rated capacity in August. And they noted, and I think this was in your agenda packets under the school section, they noted some of the other developments that have been approved or were under review in that area. So I won't go through every single one, but there's quite a few there, so they wanted to point that out. Again, our plans tend to support this development, so the comp plan does designate this area as mixed residential, and that plan does anticipate higher densities. The secret shortcut plan refines that higher density to approximately 3 units per acre across the entire category, covering that area. Staff feels that the density of the project, while higher than 3 units per acre, is a good transition from the higher densities anticipated near the interchange, is what I'm talking about. And the interchange is where your really higher densities are going to be, especially around this neighborhood center. And then you transition into some higher density residential patterns. I think when this was approved, it was close to 9. So this was a 9 dwelling unit per acre townhome development. This petition is transitioning down to around 6. And I don't want to get into phase 3 right now, but it's hard not to think about phase 3 because it is right next door. It's transitioning down even lower than what this one is. So it is transitioning away from that node. So we would be supportive of the rezoning request. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Anybody have questions for Lee?
Number of houses per acre. Number of houses per acre, Bon Terre Village.
I don't know that exact number off the top of my head, but it's pretty close to this number that you see here. It's about between 4 and 6, depending on how you want to calculate density, depending on what section you look at. Yeah. But overall, it's pretty close to that. And Bon Terre Village they have townhomes in the neighborhood. They have pretty dense single-family patio type style homes, and then some single families. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Lee, this is age targeted, correct?
Yes, sir.
And can you tell me 2 things exactly? What does that mean? And number 2, what have they done here to target the elderly into here as opposed to anybody else?
So I'll come back to this screen, and the reason I didn't want to talk about this too much is I believe that I don't think this is everything that's going to be built in phase 2. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there's going to be some 2 stories in phase 2 as well.
There was a potential mix of
Yeah.
product types.
So phase 1 was mostly 2-story townhomes, and this would be a transition. Phase 3 is going to be all 1 story. Phase 2 is going to be a mix of 2 and potentially 1 to kind of transition that density and height down. Age targeting, that really means that the developer is going to try and market this to, I guess, seniors. but they don't have to, so it's not restricted.
Okay, but when they say to target, we're trying to, the seniors, does this mean that they're doing something that makes old people happy there as opposed to young people with babies?
Right.
Is
So-
that mean there's something that this guy is doing that would make an old man like me, hey, I wanna live there, man,
I
as
can-
opposed to someone with young children?
Sure. I'll get into a little bit of it. The developer probably wants to address some of that in maybe in more detail. But a lot of times you'll have houses such as this that are one story. You may limit the number of bedrooms. Sometimes you'll get 2 bedrooms, 2 bath. Sometimes you may get a master or a bonus room upstairs. A lot of times you have a 0 entry, so you don't have, you don't have steps going up into the house. So those are some of the general things. And a lot of it just has to do with maintenance of the property. A lot of times, especially in age-restricted developments, the whole exterior is gonna be maintained. You don't have to worry about cutting your grass, all that stuff's kind of taken care of. I don't know specifically what's gonna happen in this neighborhood, but those are some of the things that people that move into age-restricted or targeted neighborhoods tend to look for.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You said you have to go through phase 1 to get to phase 2? There's no other way of getting in there?
No, sir. We did have some conversations with DOT about a driveway connection there, but they felt that it was too close to this one. So they didn't really want that.
Lee, was phase 1 age targeted as well?
I don't believe it was, no, sir.
Okay.
So the house, the picture of the house that you showed us, that's potential, could be built.
It's potential, but
Not
that may
necessarily.
not be exactly what's built, correct?
So it could be 2-story houses,
Could be.
townhouses?
Yes. It could be. And I did put in a picture of, and this, again, this is just, these are the elevations for phase 1. I don't want you to think this is what they're gonna build in this phase. I just wanted to,
But
I
they
have
could.
these, and this is what was provided in phase 1.
But they could put that
So
in.
something similar to this in phase 1.
Lee, go back to your diagram of the streets, please. So, as y'all looked at this, you were pleased with the access and egress of this, with having just one entrance?
Yes, we did have a conversation with the DOT about making a connection there. DOT did not want that connection. If you'll see, there is a pedestrian, that won't get a fire truck in, but there is a pedestrian connection to get you to a sidewalk that'll be built along Bonterra Village Way. And again, there's another stub out for phase 1 directly opposite this. So the idea is, let me jump over, yes, we fine. The idea is, this is phase 1, so you have a stub there, you have a stub there. So as property develops, when this property develops at some point in the future, the county will require them to make that connection into phase 1, and they'll more than likely have a connection out to Bonterra Village Way here. So you would have another access point sometime in the future, not immediate, but sometime in the future.
So y'all are comfortable with the fact, the way the access and egress is, especially if this is age targeted for emergency vehicles?
Yes, and we did send this off to the fire marshal's office for their comments, and they were comfortable with that, with this layout.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Lee?
What was DOT's concern about having another entrance on the Bonterra Village Way?
It was too close. They like to keep a certain distance between, usually, our ordinance actually dictates some distances based on what the speed limit, the posted speed limit for the road is. But then, of course, DOT trumps what our ordinance says because it's their road. They didn't feel comfortable with the spacing between those access points. So you've got an access point here that's already approved, and they weren't comfortable with having another access point that close.
what made you guys feel better about having almost 6 rather than 3 per acre? Just because it's close to the highway?
Yeah, so I'll go back to the plan here. Actually, give it this one. So in this plan, this hatched area is kind of is the mixed use development area, and we anticipate in the plan the higher densities occurring near the intersection and then going down as you sort of leave the intersection. So it is an average of 3 dwelling units per acre, but in areas of transition, it could be a little bit higher. If you'll remember, in this area, several months ago, there was an apartment complex that came before the board. I think you guys recommended approval. I think the Board of Commissioners ultimately turned it down. But that was, I think the apartments were about, I mean, this calls for 6. If you just looked at the apartments by themselves, I think they were around 18 or 19. And then you had some townhomes and some single families that kind of balanced it out. And that's kind of what we expect, is kind of that overall density to be around 3 units over the entire plan.
You're talking about all the hashed area as well as the yellow area there, Lee? Is that the entire
Right here.
plan?
No,
I mean, I'm just trying to figure out what kind of acreage you're talking about
Sure.
being the entire plan, because all I see is, I don't do the math the way you're doing it.
sure, I
It
want
looks
to
to me
try.
like you got twice the supposed recommended amount per acre.
I'm not sure if I can, oh, wait a minute. Bear with me just one second, I'll pull up the small area plan. Okay, so this is the adopted plan. So the pieces of property we're talking about are this corner, and this is the extent of the plan. So this is Faith Church Road, so that's kind of the, I guess if you want to call it the northern boundary, northwestern boundary of the plan. The southern boundary of the plan would be just before you get to Rocky River Road. And then the extent kind of going east to west would be, again, Rocky River Road and near the intersection of Sardis and Unionville Indian Trail. So it's a fairly big area. And again, this is where both developments are taking place, right there in that corner. And that kind of shows you the commercial node that we were talking about right here, that red, that's the commercial designation. So that's where the small area plan anticipated the commercial development to happen, and then to sort of radiate out from that, transitioning from fairly high densities to when you get out to these areas on the side to medium. And these areas over here is where you're going to transition down into your 3 and even lower than that, because we want an average of 3 units per acre. And again, some of these areas here are anticipated to be rural.
The red areas aren't going to be having any dwellings in them at all?
Since it's mixed use, it could. I think if we, and a lot of the red areas are inside the town of Indian Trail. This is a joint plan that we did with the town. A lot of these red areas are inside the town. There may be some of these that are out. I know that when Indian Trail approved, they approved a large development that kind of extends from this intersection all the way back over to Rocky River Road. And I don't know the exact number of units, but it was a really large development. This area was all commercial. There were some townhomes in this area, and then some single families kind of back this way. But they actually gave my understanding is they gave the developer the option of doing apartments above the commercial, if the developer could make that happen. If they couldn't, then that was fine. But I think if residential happened over here, that would probably be the idea as well, is that it would be primarily commercial, but if they wanted to do some mixed use, there might be an opportunity to go vertical above the retail. And maybe you could have some townhomes probably behind some of the commercial if you wanted that. But this is primarily a commercial area.
Any other questions for Lee this time?
I'd like to hear from the developer, see what they've got to say.
Okay. Thanks, Lee.
You're welcome.
Thanks for being here. Go ahead and state your name and who you're with, please.
Sure. Mike Theberg with Bowler Engineering here on behalf of the developer. Appreciate everybody's time. Thanks, Lee. Address, if I can give that, 6720 Hollow Oak Drive, Mint Hill. Lee certainly went over some of these things, so I'll try to be brief on some things that he touched on and get into a little bit more detail on some questions that everyone up here had and try to answer any other questions that I can. Like Lee had noted, this is phase 2 of Popple Meadows that we're bringing before you tonight here. It does feel like a good continuation of the first phase in terms of just trying to provide a different product while not being so different that it feels like it's a different neighborhood. It is meant to feel like one neighborhood for everyone that's living there. It is a senior age targeted neighborhood that we're working with the home builder on to try to make sure it's, I think to your point, attractive to the senior population and draw them to the area. Real quick overview, kind of like Lee had said, phase 1 that was approved was 9 units to the acre, about 99 units total of that 22 foot 2-story product that Lee had up on the screen earlier. This phase 2 is 70 units, about 6 units an acre, again trying to transition down away from the interchange to a more gradually lower and lower density. Also to try to kind of work towards the larger lots that are in Bonterra as you get further to the north. And in this area, and you can kind of see on the map from those lot sizes, Lee was alluding to that, the areas of the single family right behind phase 2, in some areas are maybe 8 or 9 units an acre, similar to phase 1. And then further to the north that you do go, those units start to get a little bit bigger, not much bigger, but that's part of kind of what we wanted to try to mimic with these 2 phases. I know we're only talking about phase 2 at the moment, but just in general, how we approached it. Just a quick aerial, kind of Lee already went over that. Just a few high points on the development, just kind of looking at it. The area up here for the common open space, kind of gathering area, along the road, sidewalk. We are providing an off-street guest parking area with the phase to try to just make sure that there's good ability for people to come and visit do all that. That's 20 spaces to have the community mailbox back in here. So that's easy access for the Postal Service. There are some, natural preservation areas that we're, providing in a few areas of the site where it made sense, and there seem to be good tree stands to do that. So we are trying to, keep the site green. And then, as a continuation of phase 1, there's a berm along the back property line where we're not preserving trees. And this was, something that we're certainly been discussing with some of the neighbors. And, if it's a berm or if it's saving some trees and a mix of the two, we're kind of flexible on whatever just makes the most sense for everyone that lives back there and try to work with them. This is just kind of a quick overview snapshot of what the 3 phases kind of look like together, just for some context. You can see that the size of the phase 3 parcel is much, it's probably about almost double the acreage of phase 1 or phase 2, but the density is considerably lower, half of what phase 1 is, and a significant step down from what phase 2 is as well. And again, you can kind of get the scale of some of the homes back here where it's a little bit denser in this part and, kind of slowly getting to be larger lots. Any questions at that point? Otherwise, I can just kind of maybe try to answer a few of the questions you guys had that Lee answered partly, and I could maybe fill in a few blanks.
Any questions, guys?
The abbreviation that you've got,
The abbreviation that you have right beside your large parking space with the 20-some-odd spaces, SWM facility?
Stormwater management.
Stormwater management, okay, so you got a retaining pond there,
Yes, sir.
okay.
And a smaller one up front too, just
Yeah.
that's the way the property splits. There's kind of
Yeah.
there's probably a high point up near the road, and most of it goes to that back corner, and a little bit goes to the front.
The, right next to Bonterra Village, where you back up there, your density in there, do you know that off the top of your head?
The smaller lots in the center, like on the other side of this road, I believe were somewhere closer to the range of, I believe it was either 7 or 8 units an acre, just if you kind of took a snapshot just in that little space.
Right.
If you included the larger lots along the fringe, it would probably be a little bit lower, probably comparable to, our density of 6.
Right.
So it's kind of right in line with.
So basically, everything's just gonna blend together then?
Yeah.
Other than the berm you have between the 2 developments?
Yeah, it wouldn't be really substantial. And that was the other thing, and I have a slide on it, but when you look at areas like this to even areas like these single family, and certainly to areas of the townhome development in Bonterra Village, their density is 3.5 units per acre for the entire development, but that includes significant acreage in the floodplain. So when you actually look at the areas around the homes in these phases that we're proposing, there's significantly more open space and green space directly adjacent to the homes than anywhere really in Bonterra Village. And that's one thing we're trying to have as part of the vision for the project, is that we're providing nice natural green spaces around these homeowners' sites to help enhance the value and feel of the community. Kind of a few things. A few of the other questions, and I can maybe skip ahead here a few slides. So this is a current version of the 2-story product for this phase. It would be a mix of stone and brick accents, hardy plank siding. The end units would be potentially side entry, a little bit wider than the center units. They were all 2-car garage, 2-car driveway products, which is from the standpoint of that age targeted, kind of just, if there's more people, visiting, and there's ability to have more guests over there. Phase 1 was 1-car garages and 1-car driveways, and was kind of a different demographic, so to speak. That was one of the renders. It's just a slightly different, larger, version of the same building, same intent. And again, these are conceptual, and the materials are something that we've, we're stating here, but the actual colors and things like that, I think, you know, be more just of an early presentation there. And then the one that Lee had would be other potential units in this phase where this is something that builders had, you know, really good success with and has a nice big front porch. But, you know, to some of the points made, you know, all of these different units are, you know, very low entry, maybe a step up to the stoop. And that's, you know, that's about it. This isn't, you wouldn't be able to build one of these and target it to, you know, senior population if it had 5 or 6 stairs going up to the front door. So that's, you know, an important feature of the home that we're trying to hold to. You know, the intent of the neighborhood is for it to be, you know, maintenance free. And just kind of written into the HOA again as another feature of the neighborhood to try to again attract that demographic that's targeted towards. You know, another important feature is the master down component. You know, you know, really both of these products, the intent is for it to be a master down product so that, you know, the living space, all the space for, you know, aging in the home, that kind of thing is there, and the upstairs is, you know, really for guests, for the grandkids, for the kids, you know, to come and visit and be able to hang out and do good, you know, fun things. And that's kind of how both of the different products are kind of laid out and targeted that way. Any other kind of questions on the elevations or the age targeting aspect, or that I could try to help answer? Back to the transportation. This is just a little context slide. That's Bonterra Village. That's the extent of Bonterra Village. All of that green is basically, you know, floodplain for the most part. And that's kind of, you can kind of see that where we're at, there's not a whole lot of open spaces in those areas around those lots, whereas you can see the plan that we have, there's quite a bit of open space around the lots directly. So if you go back to the plan, again, this isn't, I know we're on phase 2, but in the context of all 3 phases, DOT wanted this entrance here for phase 3 as far from the intersection of Poplar and Bonterra as possible, because that's just good practice to make sure that if there's any queuing there, that it's not backing up and blocking anything with this entrance. So when you factor that in and the location of phase 1, that's why they really didn't want another entrance in this location, because of the context of those 2 already being pretty close together as it was. You know, again, I know these are 2 different applications, but they're looking at it as a whole at one time, and that's how they kind of, that's part of their reasoning process for that. You know, another thing that I just wanted to point out, you know, the left turn lane that's already into this development that's approved as part of phase 1, you know, they hadn't provided any comment that they felt there needed to be, you know, any additional length to that left turn lane as part of this project. Of course, if they did, we would have to work with them on it, but at this time they have not said anything. A lot of the criteria for left turn lanes that they use talks about the existing traffic volume on the road versus the amount of cars coming into the development. Their number was around 5,000 trips per day, where they start requiring left turn lanes as a matter of fact, no matter how many trips come into the development. And the numbers that Lee had up there, this is Bonterra Village, is only around 1,300. So, you know, really they're kind of requiring that left turn lane, you know, out of planning for the future, not necessarily as a demand as the road sits today. So I think they are, you know, to their credit, looking ahead to what needs to happen to make sure this is going to still work at build out, and not just for the next 5 years. Another thing, although it is senior age targeted, and so there would, you know, really be not, you know, little to any impact on the schools. You know, in addition to the current numbers, you know, there's generally a decline in several of the middle schools, and you know, even looking out, you know, to 2027, which is then the school's current projections, the schools still have capacity. You know, really, again, there should be little to any, you know, children in this neighborhood but there's still, you know, the trends are going in the right direction for the area. Did want to just bring up one other thing, just going back to the local aerial. So it was mentioned the commercial development down at the interchange. You know, there's going to be both the Harris Teeter and the Publix that would likely be built as part of those developments on either side of the interchange. You know, and those are really good, you know, close by walkable features, you know, for the community. You know, I do believe that there's, you know, some other sidewalks that I think were being built along Bonterra Village Way that come from the interchange, if I recall.
There's actually a sidewalk that goes up the side of the interchange and connects. It's crazy.
That's right, yeah, and it kind of pops out down in here, right? It kind of pops out like down here?
Right. Actually closer to the.
Oh, closer
to
in here.
yeah.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So I mean, you know, obviously as the area has to continue developing, but there's going to, you know, in the not too distant future, there's going to be a good, you know, walkable, you know, connectivity to those shopping features for the neighbor, you know, the residents here, and that's a major amenity, and the reason why the community should be successful is because of what's going to be nearby, which is, you know, part of the reason why we wanted to propose to locate this density here, because of what would be nearby and accessible without necessarily having to get into your car and drive over.
That road right now is not very busy anyway, and it will be, but right now it's not got much traffic on it. So.
Right. Yeah. Which those numbers that Lee had kind of supported. That's a low traffic count for certain.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the amenities you made a good point of the no-step entry marketing to seniors, and it is supposed to be age targeted. Can you speak to some of the interior amenities as far as especially access into the shower and bathroom areas? I mean, is there going to be a step-in tub, or is it going to be a walk-in?
That's a good question. I'm not sure I'm 100% able to answer.
But obviously, seniors would be, you know, inclined to such things. So I'm just wondering about the interior amenities.
Right. My name is Gene Vaughn. I represent the Moser Group. Thank you for having us here this evening. Historically, that's true. Grab bars, transition walkways in the showers, not necessarily tubs unless there's one of each in the dwelling. And that's for obvious reasons, as couples age and as one spouse is older than the other and one's more mobile than the other. Potentially there could be elevated fixtures where the plugs are not as low on the wall as you know, as it would be in a standard home. Some of those are optional as it relates to what the consumer would want in the home. But the features themselves would be consistent, meaning a plug is a plug, but it could be an elevational difference based on the age. If a particular home or purchaser required additional handicap access, certainly the radius in bathrooms, it accommodates wheelchair use. Doorways are typically wider. All those features are looked at as being senior friendly.
And that's going to be provided here, or is it going to be sort of like a special order?
I can see that as we get in further discussions with the builders, where those kind of conversations would be nailed down specifically as to what would be required versus what would be optional. The best thing that we can do is make them as accommodating as we can to the folks that would just come in there and not have to make those kinds of decisions. Because the older you get, the harder those become. Why I'm here, if I might, Mr. Philippi asked a question earlier regarding age targeted, and I'd like to speak to that. I've developed and managed senior living since 1999, and it's through those kinds of conversations that Mr. Moser and I met. Is because of his desire to provide these kinds of accommodations in a growing county that we have decided to work together, and that I have joined his team with the Moser Group. But this age targeting thing is a phenomenon. It is a phenomenon because In many cases, and the best I can do is give you an example. If a gentleman is 85 years old, the last thing in the world he'll ever give away is his car keys. It's the last bastion of independence that he could possibly have. And it's the most crisis-driven point when they have to turn those keys over and say, I'm no longer in control of my ability to come and go. I have to rely on someone else. The same thing is true as it relates to the age-targeted aspect when the couple are looking at their children and their grandchildren. It's not necessarily that the couple is going to desire to go up and down stairs into the second story of their home, but it's that same willingness to be able to invite and not have a restriction be present, meaning that their children and their grandchildren can come stay with them, not stay in a hotel down the street, but come and reunite that family to where the meals occur. They're not structured. The breakfast occurs when everybody gets up, just like it used to be in years past. And so that's what this is all about to me as I look at seniors and as I have encountered seniors and heard these labor discussions, is these age-targeted communities do a tremendous good for the individuals that are living there. And it's not that they need the second story, but they would never give it up if they thought that by doing so they would lose the ability to house their family. So it is true, to your point, accommodate them well, answer some of the questions that maybe they haven't thought about in 30 years. You know, the grab bar now, those are the obvious ones. But make as many decisions on their behalf prior to them moving in as we can, and that's our desire, is to do that. Make some assumptions that we know are going to be helpful. Any questions?
Any more questions for Mike?
Real quick while you guys are at, when the neighbors, when you had your meetings, obviously nobody's here tonight. So was there issues or anything that would have kept, that anybody said no, in Bonne Terre, that my backyard's gonna have another house behind me, or?
No, sir.
Not a problem.
We, wasn't the exact same distribution list for phase 1, 2, and 3, because each one of them had a few different actual homeowners, because some of the homeowners that back up to phase 1 don't necessarily back up to phase 2, but it was generally about the same list. We had a few folks that came to the community meeting for phase 1 a year ago, 2 years ago, whenever that was. Right. No major issues really came out there. A few, I think that's maybe where the berm came from, and some of the things like that. Nobody showed up to phase 2 or 3.
May I make an additional comment? We're trying to do really well at communicating with adjacent landowners, trying to understand what their concerns are. And I have met with families in their yards, seeing the view that they have, sitting down at their table and answering questions to the best degree that I could to give them that comfort that we're going to try to do the very best we can to be good neighbors on their behalf.
And that's kind of what I alluded to earlier when I said, we're currently showing a berm back there in addition to areas of vegetation that would be preserved. If there's a strong desire, instead of that berm, there'd be a tree that's back there right now that we can save. We can work with them on that instead. We feel like the berm is a good continuation of phase 1 and provides consistency, and it would have evergreens on top of it. So eventually it would be a better screen than what's out there today. But if there's a desire from one of the neighbors to have a larger tree save that has some value to them, then we can do that instead of that berm, work berms around it or that kind of thing.
And that comment did come out of a conversation with one of the families. Absolutely.
Any other questions? Need to be answered. If not, thank you, gentlemen.
There's no problem making a left out of here.
DOT didn't seem to think there would be. I think they would probably they only asked for one outbound lane, and that's usually they ask for 2 outbound lanes if they feel like there's going to be some type of queuing issue for wait for that left leaving. And if it ever did become a challenge in the future, then that Popland, that frontage road loops back around to the next, interchange to the west, northwest. So that, if it ever became some type of a challenge in the future, you could always go right out of the neighborhood and still get back to the bypass the same way.
But you've got what, two exits on the bypass within about a mile and a half of each other.
Mm-hmm.
That this would have access to both.
Yeah, if you turned out here and went left, and then turned right onto Popland, and then turned right onto Unionville Indian Trail.
Yep.
Then you can get to it, or you could just turn right out of here, loop over, come out to here, and that's where the next interchange is. There's basically nothing along here.
Any more questions? Okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
We have no one in the audience that wants to say anything, do we? Or do we? Okay. At this time, we'll ask Lee to come up for any closing comments. Do you have any?
I don't have any closing comments, no, sir.
Nothing?
No, sir.
Okay, good.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Can we vote simultaneously on both of them, or we gotta go through this discussion second go around?
Since they're separate petitions, I get where you're going. It makes a lot of sense, but I think since they're separate petitions, you should do two separate votes.
You okay with that?
Sure.
Okay. At this time, then, do we have any other comments pertaining to this before we close this session and go to a vote? Okay. Is there any more input or anything that needs to be discussed? If not, then do we have a motion for or against?
Look,
Yes, sir.
how big are these properties, big or less?
I believe this one is 11 and some change. Yeah, this piece of property is 11.7 that you're discussing now. You want to know about phase 3? Phase 3 is, and this is based on the tax record, 20.42.
Any more questions for Lee? Any more discussion? Then, hearing none, is there a motion to approve or disapprove on the table?
I make a motion, we approve CZ 2019-006, Poplar Meadows Phase 2.
And I second.
Second. Thanks, Everett. Appreciate that. Okay, we've had a motion, had a second. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay. All those not in favor, raise your right hand. How did it turn out?
4-3 for approval.
Okay, 4-3, okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, next item on the agenda is CZ 2019-009 Poplar Meadows Phase 3. Lee?
So this is 2019-009. As you said, it's Poplar Meadows Phase 3. So it's just almost adjacent to Phase 2 that you just saw. So I think the applicant got into a little bit of the discussion a while ago. It's a little bit larger parcel. It is 99 total units. It's about 4.8 units per acre, 4.85. There is an access point. DOT did want to move it down from Poplar Road as far as they could. So you see it's there kind of close to the property line. Again, same elevations that I have in my slideshow that you saw from Phase 2. Photographs are almost identical because it is literally just down the street. So I won't really go through them that much unless the board has any questions about those photographs. This is the property that's highlighted. Again, you can see Bonne Terre Village, Town of Indian Trail. There's Phase 2 and there's Phase 1, so they're all three adjacent. The difference here is you do have a strip that's part of the Bonne Terre Village Homeowners Association common area that separates Phase 2 from Phase 3. I think that was just part of the original farm before Bonne Terre Village was developed, so that was designated as common area. Again, the model, the Metrolina model that they use for transportation analysis shows, based on the adopted plans for the area, this to be an underdeveloped property. It's underdeveloped and not undeveloped because there is an existing home on the property. Again, the zoning in the area, you have SF5 for Indian Trail, RA40 Union County, and there is an R4 piece. That's the Phase 1 parcel that was rezoned a few years ago. And you have the commercial developments that are closer to the interchange. Again, on this property, there's no major environmental features. It is fairly high. Closest stream is the one I talked about in Phase 1. Again, transportation pattern is pretty similar. ADT of 300 vehicle trips a day on Poplar Road, or on Bonne Terre Village Way, pardon me, and about 5,000 vehicle trips a day on Poplar Road. Schools are the same at Poplar, Porter Ridge Middle, and Porter Ridge High School. That's where any students that lived here would go. Land use plan is almost identical, or it is identical to what you saw previously. Mixed residential. You have a neighborhood center hub centered on the interchanges down there. Again, it's medium density. Again, the idea is you're stepping it down as you leave the commercial areas. These are the notified properties. I spoke a little while ago about how it was a little bit different for each one. For Phase 2, we got a lot of the folks here. For Phase 1, we got a lot of the folks there. And for Phase 3, we got everybody that you see highlighted sort of in green. And again, that did include the Bonne Terre Village Homeowners Association. I'm not sure why we got this piece of property here, but I guess we did. And the comments from utilities were identical to what you saw for Phase 2. Water and sewer can be extended from Phase 1 and Phase 2 if Phase 2 is approved to this phase, provided that capacity exists. The sewer that serves this area does drain to the Poplar Road pump station, and there is limited capacity in that pump station. So since there's limited capacity, it would be reevaluated at the time of when the construction plans are reviewed. And then the schools, the comments were identical. Age-targeted development located on Bonne Terre Village Way. This one's planned for 99 townhomes. For the 1920 school year, again, Poplar, 90% of capacity. Porter Ridge Middle is 89% of capacity, and Porter Ridge High School is 92% of capacity. And then in your agenda package, you'll see the number of developments that are in some stage of review in that general area. They just make a note that that could contribute to high enrollments in the future. Since this does lie in that mixed residential, and it anticipates a little bit higher densities, and the secret shortcut refines that to 3 units an acre across the entire category. Again, it's the same, really the same comments I made on the first one. The staff feels that while it is 3 units per acre, it is a good transition from the higher densities that were proposed near the interchange, and then stepping it down as you move away from the 9 units from phase 1, 6 units, and now you're stepping it down a little bit more. So we feel it's a good development complies with the plan. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on phase 3 for Lee at this time?
What happens if you don't have capacity in the sewer?
Hopefully that won't happen, but if it does, subdivision will get built.
You got a lot of other people wanting to get capacity too.
You do. And it is an ongoing issue, and we've had discussions with Public Works about it. The comments that I read are the direct comments from Public Works. Those aren't my words. So the issue in that area is the Bonterra Village pump station. It's not a treatment plant, not 12 Mile Creek. It's not an issue there. It's the pump station that pumps it over the ridge to 12 Mile Creek. So that pump station is approaching capacity. The reason that comment's worded the way it is currently there is capacity, but it's so close that literally if everybody came in at once, somebody will be out. So that's the issue. There are some interim solutions, some ideas that have been proposed, but as far as I know, none of those have been funded yet.
Lee, I have a question tying into what Charlie said. And I'm not being sarcastic. If in fact that is the case, then why would something like this even come to us? Until a decision is made that it's going to be fixed. You know, we keep hearing, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do this,
Sure.
but we don't know when it's going to happen. You know, and it just keeps coming and keeps coming and
Right.
keeps coming. Not being sarcastic.
No, sure.
Just asking a question.
Sure. Ultimately, a rezoning application is the developer's choice, so they can choose to move forward or not move forward with a development application. They have conversations with Union County Public Works, in addition to us having conversations with Union County Public Works. And I think that Public Works does have a concern with this capacity issue. Again, there are solutions that have been proposed by Public Works staff, but none of them have been funded yet. What we look at when we're giving recommendations is based on our interpretation of the comp plan and the small area plans that have been developed and come through the boards. So it is a concern that I think Public Works has, but their comments to us is they can't turn people away right now because technically at this point in time there is capacity in the plant, there is capacity in the pump station. So if this development, let's say you approved it and the Board of Commissioners approved it, and the very next day they had construction plans into our office and it was the quickest review that ever took place, they could get, if their review went smoothly and they got approved, they would get that capacity as long as they paid those capacity fees.
But then if somebody else come in with us and they were up to full capacity, the next person would have to wait.
Yes.
Until the capacity got, the plant got enlarged enough to cover more capacity.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So somebody's gonna get stopped. In the same way with this, if we approve this tonight and they waited a year to do it, and there's 3 coming in front of them, the capacity's full, they won't be able to build until they see the capacity's upgraded.
Correct, and that is something that both the planning staff and public works staff communicate to all the developers that come in. And it is specific to that Poplin Road pump station. So this is not countywide. This is this general area that has this issue. And we do communicate that. We say, hey, look, before you invest this money, before you put an option on this property, before you go through this process, please understand that this is an issue that's out there. You know, if it runs out of capacity, then we're, you know, we're sorry. But at this point in time, there is capacity,
But not much.
but not much.
Thank you.
You're, oh, sorry.
Lee, make sure I understand this correctly. If we approve this thing, and they are selling houses, they sell a house and a contract to build it, and all of a sudden, by the time it gets started, the pump capacity is finished, where does the consumer stand?
So I'll try not to get too in depth here, but the way capacity used to be reserved in Union County was at the time of construction document approval. So when preliminary plans were approved, the developer would write a check to Union County Public Works. I understand it's a pretty large check. I don't know exactly how much that capacity fee is per house, but that basically, it guaranteed you capacity. So they allocated that capacity to you at the time of preliminary approval. The legislature actually changed that. So it actually moved it back later in the process. So instead of it at preliminary, now the capacity fees, you can't pay them. I assume if a developer chose to pay them sooner, they could, but they can't, the county can't require those fees to be paid until final platting. So that's when they're paid now. So once you pay those capacity fees, that sort of reserves your slot in the plant or in the pump station.
Well, actually, what I'm getting at is developers, it's a businessman. I was one myself, not a developer, a businessman. You take your chances.
Right.
You win some, you lose some. But Joint Chief Citizen buys a piece of property, thinks he's getting a house, and finds out he can't flush a toilet. Is that possible? That's what I'm getting at. Is that possible?
No, sir.
Okay.
Before that final plat is approved, Public Works will not sign off on that final plat until those fees are paid. We hold a bond on that infrastructure until it's built. Public Works accepts it. Like I said, Public Works won't sign that final plat until that capacity is reserved. So we shouldn't run into an issue where, you know, a citizen moves in that house and all of a sudden they don't have capacity.
I'll push you a little further. What I'm getting at is I want to make sure that we don't do any kind of approval under the condition that some of the stuff will work, and our decision would hurt a individual rather badly, I would think. But if it does not, then that's fine. Off my conscience, off my concern.
Right, and we have some checks and balances that we use in our department. We make sure that before a building permit is issued for a house, that we have water and sewer availability letters from Public Works. Public Works they're involved in the review process. So the only thing that may happen since that requirement was moved back from preliminary to final is, you know, if a subdivision is finalized in phases, you may have a phase that's not final, but again, the developer still owns that property. That's not been sold off to individuals yet.
Okay. Thank you.
But by the same token, we can't decide a case like this on the merits of availability. We have to go on what we're told. That's the way
I mean, it's a point of consideration, but again.
It's not us to mitigate though.
Right,
Yeah, I mean, it's not our call,
not our
based
call.
on what you're saying, Lee, for us to play the hand of God in determining how many units. I mean, capacity is a fixed number, right? So if and not to oversimplify, but if you're saying to us that capacity reaches at 350 additional new homes, unless my 9-year-old who loves to flush the toilet 15 times every time she goes, you know, taking that anomaly out of the equation, but if it's 350, we've got phase 2 at however many units it was, 70 units. We're now breaching up to that ceiling, but before they're going to have the accessibility of even getting to the platting stage, we're gonna say, no, unfortunately, you don't have the rights to acquire these additional pieces of, capacity that you're
Right.
gonna need. Therefore, not on me to make that call. That's going to be decided purely just in time.
Right, and until they ran out, we would not, that's the point in time where we would have to say we can't accept an application.
Well, Public Works is constantly monitoring what they have,
Yeah.
how much more the capacity they have left.
Right, and it's actually kind of a complicated calculus that they use, because when you go into, when you pay those capacity fees, the state actually tells you, this is how much a house, and I don't know that number, but this is how much a house you have to allocate for, an unbuilt house. Once the house actually goes online and people start flushing the toilet, then you can use the actual capacity. And just in my conversations with Public Works, when a house is built, you actually get a little bit of capacity back, because what the state says a house uses is not actually what a house uses.
Unless it's your 9-year-old.
Unless it's your 9-year-old.
But you have to pay for it.
She's making up the
What's
variance,
that?
don't worry
But you have to
about
pay
that.
for it, whatever comes in, not necessarily
Right,
what goes out.
that's right.
But
That's
you're paying
right.
for what comes in,
That's right.
not what goes
That's
out.
right, that's right.
Good. Any more questions for Lee?
And the staff's, what was your thoughts as a staff on this section?
Since they're stepping the density down,
Right.
again, moving away from that commercial node, you've got the 9, then the 6, then the 4 to 5, we were comfortable with the rezone.
So twice the acreage, too. The first one was, second one was only 11 acres, this is like 21
Right.
acres, big difference. Is there any deceleration lanes coming into either one of these?
I'm sorry?
Any deceleration lanes coming into either one of these?
Like any right turn ins? We did.
Chris is in here, so somebody had to.
Right, no, we actually anticipated that question. And we checked with DOT, and they didn't feel it was needed.
One wasn't needed?
They did want left ins.
Left in.
I believe, is that, they wanted left ins on this one as well, right? Right, yeah. I thought it was both, I just want to make sure it was both of them,
Okay, Chris?
yeah.
Okay. Any more questions? If not, thank you, Lee.
You're welcome.
Okay, would the applicant like to discuss anything about phase 3?
Just a few small things.
Okay, come on up.
A lot of this is certainly repeated from phase
Restate your name and address like we did the first time, okay?
Mike Beberg with Bowler, here on behalf of the applicant, and 6720 Hollow Oak Drive in Mint Hill. So I'll certainly try to keep it brief. This is the phase 3 overview. As I think you guys mentioned, this is a larger piece of property than the other 2 phases, about twice the size. We're stepping down the density at the same time, both because these were generally larger homes that were proposed, still townhomes, but 1.5-story product that you saw more, that'll go back to, but the lead showed. That half-story is kind of, the guest bedroom, family visiting, that sort of thing. That's kind of the intent, or there's maybe an option for it to be a rec room, again, for purposes of guests, really. Similar, we're trying to preserve a good bit of trees along the property line here. Stormwater impoundment retention pond down here, low point of the property, more or less, is kind of really where it wants to be. DOT really drove this. We maybe originally had it a little bit further up, but DOT wanted it that way as far as possible, just to help make sure this intersection continues to function well. So they were happy with this location. You know, again, there's berm back here right now. If you look at the aerial, which I'll show you, there's not a whole lot of vegetation to speak of here. There's a pretty good amount of trees on phase 2. A lot of this land has been cleared at some point, so this is really, you know, replanting that and trying to get some more, you know, better visual buffer for the homeowners back here. Any just questions at a high level on the layout or anything I could answer before I kind of went through the rest of it?
Does the board have any questions? Phase 3.
I just have some curiosity questions.
Sure.
From what I can see here, you have some on-street parking for visitors in the curbs, or are those?
We originally proposed that, and the comment from DOT was that they did not want to have cut out on-street parking like that.
Okay.
They asked for, and we agreed to provide a wider street section in this phase. Phase 1 was approved as what DOT calls a local street.
Yeah.
Phase 2, you know, eventually we worked and talked with DOT, and they agreed to approve that as a similar street section. They did want to have this as a separate access and really a separate, you know, neighborhood, mainly just because of that area owned by Bonterra Village. To have a wider street section, it's about 8 feet wider, so what it really does is there's no notched out areas for parking like that, but it provides room to really have parking on both sides of the street and still have plenty of room for, you know, ambulances and fire trucks and things like that to come through. One of the things, for point of context, is that they did agree to and require for us to, the HOA to have to monitor the parking and, you know, be responsible for towing in phase, you know, 1 and 2 because of it being a little bit narrower of the street. And this is not quite that same concern because it's wider.
All right. Where's the mailboxes on here?
We've shown it here. They were
Okay.
fine with, it's a federal and state requirement to have the on-street ADA parking at the mailbox, so that they
Yeah,
were fine
right.
with. And right now, we're showing it in this area, although if there was any concerns for whatever reason, it certainly kind of got these kind of
Oh, I
3
see.
main quads that you could put in any one of the 3 really, and it would probably work about the same for everyone.
Okay. Just curious.
Sure.
Thank you.
This is what they're gonna look like again?
That would
Basically.
yes, in phase, that's the intent for phase 3, is it to really be all of that product, again, as part of lowering the density. Those are wider homes, those are either 30 or 35 feet in width, where the ones.
Is this also age targeted?
Yes.
Where are the air conditioners? In the backyard?
There are some air conditioners that are in the backyard, I believe. I think I've seen it in another neighborhood where they were doing that, and this one's probably,
So they don't have patios then?
there's patios, I believe, out back too. I mean, I don't know.
Next to the air conditioner? Okay.
I think some of, I mean, obviously the end units, would have an opportunity to put it on the side, but I don't think it's really been specifically talked about with them, but I know I think that's what they've done on other sites that I've seen them use it. And those were tighter sites too. That was a rear loaded product, and there was still room in the backyard for that air conditioner in the back, even with the driveway in the back, so it should be more than enough room. Again, they're 30 or 30 foot wide homes, so these are, even if you had a 10-foot wide patio up there, you'd still have 20 more feet of house to, you know, separate those air conditioners from the patio. They're more of a, I mean, it has to define as a townhome just because it is an attached product. But
Well,
they're
that's what I
really-
was gonna say. They're all attached, so if you move it over, then you're moving it over to your neighbor.
Yeah, so they gotta find a happy spot to make that best for everyone in the neighborhood. I'm sure that's important to them.
What is the width of the street?
So the right-of-ways on this is 50 feet versus, I think, 42 feet in the other phases. And I think the curb to curb, because these are all roll curbs because of the driveways, I think it's like 34, 35 feet from back of curb to back of curb here. So, you know, you really do have quite a bit of room for parking on both sides, plus at least a 20-foot area in the middle for emergency vehicles, which is the minimum.
Is there sidewalk anywhere?
Yeah, both sides of the street have
Sides of the street?
sidewalks still, yeah.
Is that that white dot?
That line, that thin line there, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mhm.
What about fire hydrants? Is there any inside or they just outside the?
I mean, we certainly would have to provide fire hydrants in here for spacing. That's all part of the review with the fire marshal, part of the site plans. But yeah, there would be a few fire hydrants.
Any more questions for the applicant? Or
And
the
I-
board?
And I had a few more things I'd run down, but
Okay.
not a whole lot.
Go ahead.
Kind of just overview again. That's where phase 3 is in relation to the other ones. Kind of did all this other stuff here with Lee, so I'll be brief with that. That was the home product that we were talking about. And one of the other main things that got brought up was the sewer, and I did want to just touch on that really briefly. So, you know, really with the development, and to Lee's point, your guys' very good questions, you know, the homeowner isn't being put at risk. You know, by the time they're able to buy a home, the capacity is reserved. And what you have is those fees that get paid at that time. I mean, that's what goes into the bank for UCPW to be able to provide system improvements to allow the next developments to occur. They can take those and they can put those into the infrastructure, you know, that then continues to allow for, you know, that growth. And the developers really are, as it gets closer to capacity, and, you know, I think they've been talking about this specific plant pump station for several years now. It's not a new thing. I don't think it's suddenly got to capacity. It's just a gradual thing as development continues. You know, they're looking at ways to resolve that. They're coming up with solutions. They, you know, may not be at the final solution to it yet, but, you know, as these impact fees continue to be paid, they can then go towards that solution. You know, the developers really pay for the continued growth as developments get approved and as plats get recorded and those fees are paid. So I mean, that's a lot of, you know, really a benefit to it. I know there's certainly, you know, they're certainly using some of that existing capacity, but, you know, a lot of those improvements can then benefit larger groups of people because you're paying it forward to the kind of the next group that would end up being coming in. And, you know, that's kind of something, just as, you know, the process to have to work through it, you know, whenever that actually gets to the point of capacity. We just know it's not there yet. And they, like Lee said, it's kind of a moving target because it's not necessarily a fixed set of math. You have to kind of get out there, measure, see what happens. They're on a, you know, a pretty regular basis on that to try to keep tabs on it.
I think that's one thing that the developers are not just taking all the time. They're giving back through these high impact fees. Money, their impact fees, money they're putting back in to help the community. And I think people don't realize what all goes on behind the scenes.
Sure, right, and yes, that's a great point. And, you know, as the age-targeted development, you know, there will be less impact on schools. I mean, really little to no impact on schools. Whereas, you know, normally, yes, they're paying impact fees, but at the same time, they're taking up school resources and funds there, or, you know, that kind of thing. There's really more of a contribution to the community and less of an impact on the community as part of age-targeted communities, because they're not necessarily using all of the resources that a traditional community would. And honestly, I think that was really all I had to add with this phase. Again, I'm certainly happy to answer any other questions, but I think you guys all already asked some pretty good ones. So.
Okay. Any questions? Anybody have any questions?
There's no amenity centers or anything in any of these phases?
Well, in phase 2, there was kind of this, you know, identified gathering space. I think it's kind of early just to know what the idea would be, but it would simply, again, be targeted towards the, you know, the audience that they're trying to attract to this community, whether that be, I know in some other, you know, there's a list of different things that I know they've done in other communities. They have done pickleball courts, they have just done fire pits and gazebo areas, they've just done, you know, gathering spaces or gardens or, so I mean, it's definitely in their interest to provide something that's attractive and wants to make people move here. You know, the phase 3, there's not, you know, that same exact single space. There's really more 3 different spaces that they could, you know, do something in. We're kind of just providing opportunities with this plan versus knowing exactly what would be built. But if anything, this phase would even have more opportunities than phase 2 would for that, since there's kind of 3, you know, spread out areas that could potentially be provided with some type of amenity program.
And Lee, you said that before, there's going to be a sidewalk going all the way down Bonterra Drive, right?
Yes.
Bonterra Village Way.
Yes, so they're building sidewalks on, as part of phase 1 and proposed in phase 2 and 3. The only disconnect is gonna be the, property that Bonterra Village Homeowners Association owns. Cause they can't build a sidewalk over someone else's property. So that'd be a small connection that's in the town of Indian Trail. I would imagine that at some point Indian Trail would probably build that small section of sidewalk there.
Well, I'm sure that whoever's going to use the sidewalk is going to make their own
Right,
little way over there anyway.
There'll be a path.
There'll be a path, exactly.
Yeah, it finds itself after a little while, yeah.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you all.
Appreciate that. You two gentlemen will make any comments or anything? Okay. Thank you very much then. We don't have anybody else from any of the other meetings that y'all have had, so we'll bypass that. And at this point, does the board have any more questions before we close this portion of the agenda? Okay. Do we need to discuss anything further? All right.
I got one question, I don't know who
Yep.
can answer it.
Okay.
There's gonna be a homeowners association here, right?
Yes.
Who says that the homeowners association can't say, we don't wanna put age-targeted people in here anymore?
Well, I mean, since it's not age restricted, there is a difference between age restricted and age targeted. Age restricted developments, there's some federal guidelines and state guidelines that you have to follow.
This is age-targeted.
Age targeted is you're basically marketing it toward, I don't know what the age you're
Middle-aged
marketing
people.
it toward, but usually
Middle-aged
55 plus is.
Middle-aged people, like me.
Yeah. Right.
No, when I asked about that, I was thinking like pickleball courts or horseshoe courts, you know, swimming pools, stuff like that.
That's exactly what, we found that, in all of our age targeted and restricted communities, that pickleball court is a big deal right now.
Yep, big time.
Okay, do we need any further input or clarification?
Did that answer your question?
No.
No.
So this is age targeted,
This is
so they could say, you know, some kids just get married and you want a nice little place or something, they could say, okay, sure, go ahead, we have one for you.
Sure, they could.
Okay.
Any further clarification from the staff or applicant? Any discussion at all?
I haven't been convinced that our units per acre overall, with all these other units gonna want to get zoning approval too, is gonna meet this overall plan number. I just can't see the plan number being met.
Okay.
I just see it being way exceeded.
Right.
And that might be the thing to do. I don't know. It looks like these look like very well thought out places. what these gentlemen have talked about. It looks like they've given it a lot of thought. I just built a house for myself and my mother, and I moved my mother right next door to me. All I know is they filled up their garage first thing. And so I've got 2 cars sitting out there. One of them needs to be sold so that my stepfather will not drive because he's a dangerous son of a gun on the road. But I know it's not gonna happen. And I know when they have Sunday school classes and they have a covered dish supper, they're not gonna go from that parking lot on phase 2 and walk all the way with the covered dish at 82 years old over to the last house on the back end street. That ain't gonna happen.
Right.
That's gonna be an empty parking lot. And I really don't know what to do about it, other than make the streets real wide.
And I think that was DOT's, I think that's why they required that collector street standard.
That's the reason I didn't vote for the
Sure.
other.
Thank you, Charles. Any more comments? Clarification, et cetera? If not,
I do have one
Yes, sir.
curiosity question. What's the price point on these? Yeah.
Mr. Moser, why don't you come up and introduce yourself and everything so we make sure everybody hears you.
Dennis Moser, the Moser Group, 231 Post Office Drive. We haven't finalized, we're talking to H&H Homes, who we've done other senior communities for and working with, and those price ranges are from like $195 up to about $255. And you know, we're trying to fill a demand that's coming in this county whether we want it or not. I mean, you know, a lot of the kids are moving down here from up north. You know, a lot of kids are here and the parents want to be with those grandkids. And so we're feeling the need, you know, all over the county. If you notice, all of the projects, or most of them that we're bringing to you and, you know, bringing around the county, we're feeling the need for this, you know, senior housing. There's a big, big demand, you know, for senior housing. And I think to answer one of your questions about, you know, is it targeted or is it restricted? If you target it, you've got to target it. And, you know, even with restricted, you can allow, what, 20% of anybody can live there anyway. But
Right.
when you target it, you provide all the amenities just for those seniors. And your average age is going to be about 68. But that community, 100% of the sales in the beginning will be in that price, in that age group. Because that builder, that would be a death blow to that builder, you know, to not have that community 100%, you know, in that age bracket that he's looking for. So, because, you know, everything is set up for them, you know, to make it convenient in the latter parts of the life. But the population in Union County, for the first time, in 2019, for the first time, there's more folks that are 65 and older than are 18 and under. And that's all we're doing, is we're here trying to meet a demand, you know, that for these senior folks, and give them a comfortable place to live and not have to mow grass, not have to maintain their homes, and just be comfortable in the latter parts of their lives with their grandkids. They want to be there for the birthdays, they want to be there for the weddings, they want to be there, so they move down here. Well, they're not looking for a 1 acre, you know, place to mow grass and maintain. They're looking for somewhere where they can be free and join the little Red Hat Ladies Club and go on their Sunday school, you know, outings and be with those grandkids and be at every T-ball game, soccer game. So they don't want to be held down by that home. So
Thank you.
thank you very much.
I think you're reading the market very well. I feel like there's needs for things like this.
Yes, sir.
And there's people who want to mow yards and there's people who don't.
The ones that we're doing and the ones that Epcon are doing, which they do an amazing job, you know, as well, they're selling, it's, you know, it's just lightning fast how fast they're selling. and you know, you know, as you get older, you know, it just makes sense to go to something like that. I know I'm going to consider it, you know. I don't want to keep, you know, doing all that maintenance, you know, and stuff as well.
People want to downsize.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate that. Are there any other clarifications that we need tonight? If not, then I'd like to call for a motion on CZ 2019-009 Poplin Meadows Phase 3. Is there a motion on the table?
I'll make the motion according to the presentation.
I'll second.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Russell. We appreciate it. All those that are in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, all those opposed, like sign. Okay, thank you very much. What was the count on that?
4-3 to
4-3 again, okay. Okay. Thank you all.
But you would've went inside,
Appreciate it very, very much. Okay.
Split decision, split decision.
See you next time.
At least it's gonna show we're all thinking.
Okay, let's continue with our agenda. And we need to have a planning staff report.
We just recently got the budget approved for 2019-2020 planning. We got funding, matching funds for our critical intersection study that we've been doing. I know Bjorn has spoken several times about that process. You know, we start off with a stakeholders group made up of staff from the towns plus DOT staff and our planning staff. I forgot the number they started off originally. We got down to 15, and then we got down to 12 that we were going to propose for design. We recently got approval for half of that amount. So we cut our 12 down to 6, and once we did that, 2 of the 12 had already got approved for construction. So we had to find two more to put into our group. So like I said, we got approval from the county for matching funds. We got approval from CARPO, I think it was $120,000. And what that's going to do is we've identified the intersections. Now we've got $120,000 to do design work, so that now we can, when construction funds come available, we've got a plan, we've got design and stuff, so it makes our projects a lot more competitive. And you'll notice around the county here, we've got a lot of intersection improvements. So that's one thing that's going on. We also got approval for a Planner 1. We're a real flat staff here, and so we're concerned about succession. You know, that we've got people to replace me, but we don't have people to replace like Lee, you know. And so what we're doing is we've got a Planner 1. Hopefully they'll work, with Lee on subdivisions, with Lee on rezoning, work with Bjorn on transportation, even work some with Brian Hawkins in our stormwater, and with Jim King, in the zoning administration, so that that when one of us moves on, we'll hopefully have a person that can step into that. So that too will give us some more capacity, because you can see we've been really busy. I mean, we have 2 and 3 rezonings, at every meeting. Lee has a bunch of subdivisions, complaints and violations are through the roof. You can see Bjorn, he is, the reason he's not here tonight, he had a meeting up in Indian Trail, so we've got a lot going on, but we got some extra capacity. We got some money to do some more studies, so we're looking forward to 2019, 2020 to be a very successful year. So,
Dick, quick comment. Had the opportunity to hear Bjorn make a presentation for the Waxhaw Board of Commissioners. Outstanding presentation. I know the audience really liked what he had to say and were enlightened. So you'd have to go to the University of Facebook to find out what's going on. But really appreciate how transparent this is all coming together.
yeah. Well, thank you.
Yes.
And I'd like to add, You're irreplaceable.
He's asked for a raise now.
Just thought I'd throw that out. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Dick, appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna do our comp, we're gonna update our comp plan, and it sounds like that when we say an update, that it's not a major overhaul, but I think it's gonna turn into a major overhaul. But we're gonna do it within staff this time. We're gonna have some consultant stuff is, for graphics, those kinds of things, but as far as facilitating the meetings and doing that kind of thing, we're gonna do it in-house. And we're trying to schedule a meeting with the Board of County Commissioners, first off, to kind of, here's our old comp plan, what worked about that, what didn't work, what did you understand, didn't understand, kind of get some comments on how we can improve that, but also get their vision, like, well, what are y'all looking for? And so we ain't got it scheduled. It's probably be the last of July, more than likely, it'll be in August sometime. But as soon as we get that scheduled, we think it'd be a good idea if the planning board would also be there to hear their vision and that type of thing. The commissioners have talked about too, once we do that, we get kind of the marching orders from them, we kind of see the direction they want to go in, is they want to have some types of development symposiums with the towns, to see like, well, here's where we're headed, here's our vision, what do you think, what's happening in your community, how can we work together, so that when we have, because almost the way the county's made up, almost all our zoning is either next to a town or in a little hole like that, so that we're working with the towns as we move forward, and all of us be on the same page, so that when they look at the plan and adopt it, they understand, like, okay, that adoption, that's going to be the basis or the guiding principle when we get rezonings. Do we feel comfortable with that? Do we feel comfortable with apartments in this area? Is this the area we want industrial to be, or is this the area we want retail to be? Or here's areas we don't want to grow, we want to conserve and we want to protect, so that we have a plan that's in step with, as we come forward with the zoning, they can see how that comp plan and that rezoning work together or don't work together. So, but that's on the horizon, so hopefully we can get started towards the latter part of the summer or the very first part of the fall to start working on that. Like I say, right now we're trying to set, the first thing is a meeting with the commissioners to get some direction, their vision, what's worked, what hadn't worked.
And I'll add on a little bit to that. Just today, we actually had a meeting, just sort of an introductory meeting with the new Public Works Director. And I thought he was really excited about this process. And I think this is probably the first time that in Union County we're going to have a comp plan and a water and sewer master plan update that are going to sort of work in tandem. And sort of our vision and his vision were that the comp plan would be a little bit out front and the utilities plan would be a little bit behind that, so he could see, all right, well, here's where the citizens want the growth to happen, this is where they don't want it to happen, well, this is where I need to plan my infrastructure. And that's a positive thing, because I don't think that's ever happened where they've worked at the same time.
You're gonna let DOT to work with you now.
Well, we will have them, they will be on our steering committee.
Any more questions for these two gentlemen? If not, thank you. Any comments from the board? There's none? Louis? Everett? Russell? Any comments?
Yeah.
Robert? Charlie? Patrick? Do we have a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Patrick. Second for Charlie. All those in favor say aye. 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 They got it. Okay. Thank everybody for being here. Appreciate it. How's the pricing?